What if I told you not as poetry, not as imagination, but as truth that your future is not predetermined, that it is not etched permanently in stone by the choices of your past, that the version of you who faltered, who surrendered to fear, who lived beneath his strength, was nothing more than a draft? And what if this moment, as you take back the pen, you realize this: you are not bound to your past. You are the author of your next chapter. And the lines you write today, through your thoughts, your words, your repeated actions, will become the life you live tomorrow. So I ask you directly, are you ready to create something new? Not with your hand, but with your habits. Not with ink, but with identity. You did not arrive here by chance. No man hears this message unless something within him is prepared to rise. And though the world may dismiss this as another speech, I tell you clearly, this is no performance. This is your interruption, a divine disruption, a mental reprogramming for those who are weary of drifting aimlessly and are now prepared to take command. But I must be truthful with you. Hearing these words once will not be enough. What you repeat becomes your rhythm, and rhythm becomes identity. So I will share these laws with you, one by one, not to spark you for a moment, but to change you forever. And if you are bold enough to return to this message over and over, you will not even recognize the man you will become. This is the cornerstone of transformation. Autosuggestion, the intentional feeding of your subconscious with the reality of who you have chosen to be. And the laws I will now deliver are not theories. They are carved truths, proven in the lives of men like Carnegie, Ford, Edison, Lincoln, and Schwab. Men I studied, men I walked alongside, men who refused to wait for confidence but created power through relentless repetition. And you, my friend, are no different. You are not weak. You have only been repeating weakness. You are not broken. You have only been following a pattern that was never meant to be yours. But today that cycle ends. This is your new beginning. This is your rewrite. Let us start. Law 1. You become what you think about. Every man lives under a law higher than any court, constitution, or nation, the law of thought. As certain as the sun rises and gravity holds your body to the earth, you will always become the dominant thought you hold in your mind. Not the wish you speak of, not the fleeting hope you recall now and then, but the idea you dwell on most. This law is simple, and that is why so many overlook it, because it does not flatter the ego, it does not inflate the intellect, but it is the root law of all human change. Let me speak plainly. You are not your thoughts, but you are always becoming the thoughts you repeat. And the man who permits fear, doubt, confusion, and worry to take residence in his mind will inevitably build a life that mirrors those ideas. This is not philosophy, this is psychology. This is the very way your subconscious mind functions. Let us consider the example of Andrew Carnegie, the man whose outlook shaped the foundation of everything I have taught. When I first encountered him, he did not speak to me of steel or fortune or politics. Instead, he asked me a single question: what is the one thing you think about when no one else is watching? He understood something the world still fails to grasp, that the thoughts you nurture in silence become the blueprint of your destiny. Carnegie thought about growth, about influence, about legacy. He did not see himself as a mere boy from Scotland, but as a force destined to construct a new world. And because he rehearsed that identity, because he held that vision before him every day, reality had no choice but to submit to it. Now let me take you to Henry Ford, a man born into simplicity, mocked for his lack of formal education. Yet he repeated one idea louder than all others. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right. What was that phrase? It was not clever wordplay. It was mental conditioning. It was a law, disguised in simple language. Ford focused on possibility. And because he repeated that belief long enough, with conviction, it became the architectural plan of his subconscious mind. And that mind went on to construct an empire. Understand this: the mind is a garden. The seeds are your thoughts. The emotions are the water. And repetition is the sundae. Whatever you plant, nurture, and repeat will grow. If you plant fear and repeat it, your life will mirror it. If you plant faith and reinforce it, your future will bow to it. Now pay close attention. I am not speaking of idle wishing. I do not mean the man who shuts his eyes, daydreams once, and calls it belief. No. I am speaking of the man who repeats intentional thought until it becomes his dominant frequency. Let us return to Thomas Edison. Do you think he never felt doubt during the 10,000 failed attempts at creating the electric light? Of course he did, but his prevailing thought was always, "It will work." And because he returned to that idea not once, not twice, but 10,000 times, failure could not shake his core identity. He became the very thing he thought about most, and that was light. Now let me ask you, what do you think about most? When your phone is off, when the noise is silent, when no one else is watching, what thought do you rehearse in the quiet? Because that thought is your true belief, and that belief is shaping your results. If your dominant thought is delay, then your results will forever remain stuck. If your dominant thought is fear, then hesitation will follow you. If your dominant thought is blame, you will remain stagnant. But if your dominant thought is purpose, if your dominant thought is faith, if your dominant thought is, "I am becoming the man I was created to be," then you will begin to rise. From this moment, you must guard your thoughts as though they are treasure. You must declare your identity daily. You must write your aim with precision, and you must think only of that which you intend to embody. Repeat this to yourself. I am not a captive of wandering thoughts. I am the architect of focus. My dominant thoughts are intentional, sharp, and aligned with my purpose. What I dwell on most, I inevitably become. So I choose to think power. Let me give you a practical system to install this principle. Each morning, write down the man you are becoming, one sentence, clear and in the present tense. Example, I am disciplined, decisive, and destined to create an empire. Each afternoon when distractions are strongest, pause and speak that identity aloud as if your future depends on it, because it does. Each night before sleep, envision that identity as already complete. Feel it. Speak it again. Allow your subconscious to dream of the man you have chosen to become. This is how you take command of your mind. Not through fleeting emotion, not through shallow motivation, but through repetition of identity. This is how Abraham Lincoln overcame despair, political exile, and the fracture of a nation. Not because he always felt strong, but because he held a dominant thought of unity and freedom. That thought consumed him. It fueled his fire. And though he bent beneath immense pressure, he never broke because his thoughts were anchored. That is now your mission, to forge a mental anchor so unshakable that no storm can move it. To become the man whose inner voice speaks louder than any external noise. To obey the law that has never failed. You become what you think about most. Say it now. I think power. I speak power. I become power. And then repeat it again and again until your subconscious accepts it as law and your life begins to mirror the truth you now live by. Let us proceed to the next law. The law that transforms thought into faith-driven action. Shall we continue? Law 2. Faith is the only cure for fear. If you are to create a life of strength, influence, abundance, and spiritual fulfillment, you must grasp this law above all others. Faith and fear cannot share the same ground. One will conquer, the other will perish. You cannot speak of transformation while practicing hesitation. You cannot walk in destiny while bowing to fear. The instant a man chooses faith, truly chooses, it begins to suffocate fear into nothingness, because fear holds no power unless you feed it. And what nourishes fear? Doubt, delay, confusion, excuses, indecision. These are the conditions in which fear spreads like a plague. But faith is not an emotion. It is not blind hope. It is not a convenient thought you whisper when life feels easy. No, faith is a condition of the mind. It is belief embedded through repetition and strengthened by decisive choice. Let me share the story of a man who embodied this law completely. Henry Ford. When Ford began, he was not taken seriously. He was mocked. The very idea of a horseless carriage was dismissed as fantasy. Even after some success, his own engineers told him it was impossible to build an 8-cylinder engine in a single block. And do you know what he said? Build it anyway. They returned again and insisted it could not be done. His reply, build it anyway. He said it over and over until eventually they succeeded. Why did he persist? Because his faith spoke louder than their fear. Ford once said, "Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal." That is the posture of faith. Keep your eyes fixed on the vision. Repeat belief until it overpowers fear. Act in harmony with destiny, even when it is not yet visible. Faith is not mere positive thinking. It is focused belief, deliberately planted into your subconscious through repetition and decision. Consider Thomas Edison. This man endured 10,000 failed attempts before producing a functioning light bulb. How does a man continue after 100 failures? 1,000, 10,000? The ordinary man gives up after 3 tries. But Edison did not carry ordinary belief. He was consumed, he was driven by purpose, and that purpose birthed an unshakable faith. He declared, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." What is that? That is a man who refuses to let fear take the stage. That is a man who trained his subconscious to obey faith, not statistics, not opinions, not fleeting evidence. Now let us turn to Abraham Lincoln, perhaps the greatest embodiment of faith in the face of adversity. Lincoln did not ascend to the presidency through charm or popularity. He rose through clarity of mission and the endurance of belief. He lost elections, he battled depression, he endured ridicule and political betrayal. Yet he pressed on, and he led a divided nation through civil war. During the darkest nights of that war, when death and despair overshadowed the Union, Lincoln wrote affirmations to himself. He spoke words of unity and strength into his own mind. Why? Because he knew that if he surrendered his thoughts to fear, he would be paralyzed and the nation would collapse. He once declared, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." That is faith. Not wishful thinking, not chance. Creation belief spoken and repeated until it manifests into reality. And now, what about you? When fear whispers in your mind, do you answer with belief? When the road grows uncertain, do you hesitate or do you persist? You must now choose to make faith your natural state. And that begins with 3 disciplines. Declare your vision daily. Speak it aloud, not as a hope, but as a law. Act in alignment before you feel prepared. Action creates evidence. Evidence strengthens faith. Refuse to give voice to fear. You cannot afford careless language. Every word is training your subconscious mind. Say this aloud. Faith is not emotion. Faith is identity. I move before I feel prepared. I trust before I see results. I act in faith. I build in faith. I win in faith. Understand this principle. Faith is not a guarantee of outcome, but it is guaranteed power the moment you choose to live by it. Andrew Carnegie, the man who taught me the principles behind everything I now teach, said to me, "Mr. Hill, teach men to replace fear with faith. Do that and they will build anything." That statement became my mission. And now that statement must become your mission, because fear will not disappear with more knowledge. It will not fade with time. It must be destroyed by repeated belief, decisive action, and unwavering forward motion. This is how you starve doubt. This is how you create certainty. This is how you transform your life. By embedding the law of faith into every layer of your being. Let this be your command. From this moment forward, I will not obey fear. I will act in faith. I will speak belief. I will move as a man who has already won. Repeat it daily, for repetition is the only language your subconscious respects. And once your subconscious accepts this law, there is nothing beyond your reach. Now let us advance to Law 3, the law that gives your faith a structure, a direction, and a fire that cannot be put out. Law 3, the law of definite chief aim. There is no tragedy greater than a man with potential who drifts, drifting in thought, drifting in effort, drifting in identity. Why? Because he lacks a definite chief aim, a singular purpose, a clear direction. He wakes not with decision, but with distraction. He walks not with command, but with confusion. He speaks not with conviction, but with hesitation. And what happens to such a man? He becomes like a leaf in the wind, carried by opportunity, misled by opinion, governed by fear, and forgotten by history. A man without a definite aim is not truly alive. He is only existing. But the man who holds a definite chief aim, who repeats it, affirms it, breathes it daily, is dangerous. He is focused. He cannot be moved by drift. He no longer questions what he should do, who he should become, or what he is capable of, because he has already chosen. And the mind, once resolved, begins to bend the world until it aligns with that decision. Let us turn now to the man who first revealed this law to me, Andrew Carnegie. When I met Mr. Carnegie for the very first time, I was a young man filled with curiosity but lacking a clear direction. He spoke to me with such force, such certainty, that his words shook me to my very core. He said, "Young man, an individual who does not hold a definite purpose in life will fall victim to petty worries, to fear, to troubles, and to self-pity, and all of these lead to failure." He made it absolutely clear that every great fortune, every great movement, every great identity begins with one thing: a clearly defined chief aim. Not a vague hope, not a half-formed idea, but a precise and deliberate declaration. Carnegie's purpose was never simply to become wealthy. His aim was to rise as the steel king of America, to transform the industry, to bring order to a market in chaos. Every decision he made, from the books he studied to the men he chose to the very thoughts he entertained, was shaped by that single aim. Now listen with care. You do not need 100 different goals. You need one dominating aim, and every other goal must fall beneath it as a servant. Consider Henry Ford once more. His chief aim was not just to produce automobiles. It was to make the automobile accessible to the everyday working man. That aim drove him. It guided every invention, every partnership, every system he created. While others focused on building luxury, Ford built for the masses. He never abandoned his aim when obstacles arose. He simply adjusted his strategy. The rise of the Ford Motor Company was not the result of superior talent. It was the result of relentless focus. This law of definite chief aim is what separates those who merely try from those who truly build. Charles Schwab, chosen by Carnegie himself to lead U.S. Steel, understood this truth. His aim was to become the foremost business leader of his generation. He was not an engineer. He was not the most brilliant man in the room, but he was the clearest. His clarity of purpose made him indispensable. He knew precisely what he wanted, and because of that clarity, every room he walked into shifted in his favor. Now let me turn the mirror toward you. What is your definite chief aim? Have you written it down? Do you repeat it each morning and each night? Have you built a structure of thought around it? Or are you still drifting, hoping that purpose will eventually reveal itself? It will not. Purpose is not found. It is declared. You must decide it. You must claim it. You must train your subconscious mind to accept it as law. Because here is what the average man does. He sets goals that shift with his moods. He runs toward ideas that lose their fire after a few weeks. One day he dreams of wealth, and the next day he settles for security. He builds momentum only to let it wither away. Why? Because he never established a definite chief aim. He never made it a law within his mind. And the subconscious, unless given precise direction, will always default to fear, to habit, to comfort. So let me share with you the exact method I have passed on to thousands. 1. Write your chief aim in the present tense. I am building my exact goal with purpose, precision, and unwavering belief. 2. Repeat it with emotion every morning and every night. Repetition charged with feeling is the only way to imprint it upon the subconscious. 3. Act in alignment every single day, no matter how small the step may seem. Identity is not defined by what you claim to believe. It is revealed by what you consistently do. Let me speak with clarity. Your life will either be the result of a definite chief aim or the product of other people's agendas. There is no middle ground. So, decide now. Are you constructing your vision, or are you helping to build someone else's? Say this aloud. I do not drift. I declare. I do not react. I aim. I do not guess. I know exactly what I am building. And repeat it daily. Just as Carnegie did, just as Ford did, just as Edison did. They were not more talented than you, but they were more focused than you. And now that you know this law, excuses have no place left. Write your chief aim. Breathe it. Build around it. And when distraction pulls at you, return to it. Because everything you desire rests on this, and the man who carries a definite chief aim with clarity, passion, and discipline becomes unstoppable. Now let us move forward to Law 4, the law of specialized knowledge, the very tool that transforms aim into strategy and strategy into victory. Law 4, the law of specialized knowledge. General knowledge produces general results. Specialized knowledge, when merged with purpose and decisive action, becomes a force without limits. There is a common saying that knowledge is power. But I tell you that is only half the truth. Knowledge is merely potential power. Only when it is specialized, directed, and applied with purpose does it become true power. A man can spend his entire life gathering facts, filling his mind with information, attending endless lectures, and still remain trapped in mediocrity. Why? Because his knowledge is scattered, shallow, unfocused, like a flood without direction. It spreads everywhere but moves nothing. But the man who sharpens his learning, who chooses one domain, one craft, one discipline, and then studies it relentlessly, applies it daily, and refines it through fire, becomes unstoppable. In time, that man becomes irreplaceable. This is the law of specialized knowledge, the weapon of the giants, the sharp blade that separates amateurs from architects. Let me illustrate with Henry Ford. Ford was ridiculed for his lack of traditional education. Critics tried to label him an ignorant mechanic, unworthy of his influence. So, what did he do? He took them to court. And when questioned on the witness stand, he answered with confidence, "I don't need to fill my mind with facts I can easily obtain from a man I hire." He wasn't arrogant. He was making a profound statement. He was making a powerful declaration. He didn't require general knowledge. What he needed was specialized mastery and men who possessed it. Ford's brilliance was not that he knew everything. His genius was in knowing exactly what he needed to understand and how to apply that knowledge to his vision with relentless precision. Ford grasped what most people still overlook. The world does not reward the most intelligent, it rewards the most valuable. And value is born from specialization. Think for a moment of Thomas Edison. Was he a philosopher, a politician, a man who dabbled in everything? No. He was a master of practical invention. His expertise in electrical systems, resistance, materials, and industrial application was profound, not scattered. He didn't dabble, he immersed himself. He understood filaments better than anyone alive. His experiments numbered not in the hundreds, but in the thousands. He wasn't chasing trivia. He was chasing truths that could be proven. And because of this relentless depth, he became the man who literally brought light to the world. Now reflect on Charles Schwab, whom we have already spoken of. He was not the most formally educated man in the steel industry. Yet his specialized knowledge of people, leadership, organizational psychology, and business structure set him apart. And Carnegie recognized this. That is why he placed Schwab in command. Not because Schwab knew everything, but because he knew what mattered, and he applied it with boldness and clarity. Now ask yourself, what is the one field I am devoted to mastering? What specialized knowledge, if pursued with intensity, would make me indispensable? Here lies the truth. The average man reads 1 or 2 books a year, often chosen at random. He studies inconsistently. He consumes whatever content drifts into his feed. His mind is like an untamed dog, jumping from thought to thought, stimulus to stimulus. He is ruled by noise. But the great man, the man who lives by the law of specialized knowledge, chooses one mountain and climbs it. He commits to one discipline, one craft, one pursuit, and he returns to it every day until his knowledge becomes instinct, until his practice becomes rhythm, and his rhythm turns into power. And then the world comes searching for him. Let me now give you the precise framework that was handed down to me by Carnegie himself. First, define your definite chief aim. You have already taken this step. Next, ask, what knowledge directly fuels this aim? Second, list the skills and domains required to dominate this field. If your ambition is to lead an empire, study leadership, influence, systems, and strategy. If your desire is to master a craft, immerse yourself in technique, repetition, and innovation. Third, construct your reading list. No more casual or aimless reading. Choose the 5 to 10 most essential books or mentors within your chosen domain and study them. Not once, not for entertainment, but to install them into your mind. Fourth, teach what you learn. Carnegie once said, "The best way to deepen your knowledge is to share it." When you teach, your mind arranges the truth with greater precision. Fifth, apply it daily. You don't merely study, you build, you test, you advance. Every lesson must translate into action. But let me warn you, this law demands patience. The results are not immediate, but they are inevitable. The man who cultivates specialized knowledge over years becomes immovable. He is not shaken by layoffs. He is not swayed by market turbulence. He becomes the source of solutions, and those around him cannot help but recognize his worth. Abraham Lincoln, though remembered as a statesman, began as a poor farm boy. He never attended elite institutions, but he mastered one thing: language. He read voraciously. He trained himself in law. He immersed himself in oratory, rhetoric, and scripture. Why? Because he understood that if he could master words, he could move hearts, and hearts, once moved, could transform a nation. That razor-sharp focus carried him to the White House and through the most devastating internal war America ever endured. Now let me address you directly. Stop skimming. Stop scattering your attention. Stop consuming what does not contribute to your destiny. Choose your aim. Choose your domain. Choose your fire. And then burn away everything else. Say these words aloud. I am not a generalist. I am a weapon. I do not chase distractions. I forge mastery. My knowledge is profound. My knowledge is rare. My knowledge is power. Repeat it daily. Reinforce it constantly. Because the world does not give its highest rewards to those who know everything. It gives them to those who know exactly what they are doing and do it better than anyone else. That is Law 4. Now let us move into Law 5, surround yourself with power. Your environment either strengthens you or destroys you. You may believe that success is forged alone in the silence of your own mind through grit, discipline, and long hours of invisible labor. And while that is partly true, I must reveal the greater law. No man achieves power in isolation. Every empire that has ever been built was first fortified by the right minds, the right voices, and the right energy. You do not rise alone. You rise with those who breathe strength into your vision, or you collapse in the company of those who drain it from your soul. Environment is never neutral. It is either a sword in your hand or a chain around your neck. Let me speak plainly. You must surround yourself with people who sharpen you, not soften you, people who speak possibility into your future, not doubt into your goals. If you are the most ambitious man in the room, then you are in the wrong room, because what surrounds you will soon become part of you. Henry Ford understood this with absolute clarity. He did not create the Ford Motor Company in isolation. He built it with a mastermind circle, a concept I have taught extensively, because it is among the most powerful laws of achievement. Ford aligned himself with men who were not flatterers but fire starters. He sought out men like Thomas Edison, Harvey Firestone, and even shared his thoughts with Luther Burbank. These men gathered often not for amusement but for alignment. They exchanged ideas, debated industry, philosophy, and the future. Most importantly, they built belief together. For belief, when reinforced among strong minds, multiplies in power. And fear, when left unchecked among weak minds, spreads like a plague. You must now ask yourself, who do I allow into the temple of my mind? Who holds the keys to my focus, my energy, my conviction? Andrew Carnegie, the man who shaped my life's mission, once told me, "Mr. Hill, show me a man's 5 closest associates, and I will show you his future." What he meant was this: you cannot rise above the level of your circle. You cannot cultivate discipline while drowning in distraction. You cannot hold to faith when those around you breathe only doubt. Carnegie chose his men carefully, not merely for their skills, but for their spirit. He demanded loyalty to purpose, a hunger for growth, and belief in making the impossible reality. He elevated Charles M. Schwab to his right hand, not because Schwab knew it all, but because his belief burned like fire. His optimism was unyielding, his presence magnetic. He drew out greatness in others simply by the force of his energy. Now look at Thomas Edison. In his laboratories, cynicism was forbidden. He would dismiss assistants who joked too often about failure, not because he lacked humor, but because he understood the sacredness of mental atmosphere. His laboratory was not merely a workshop of invention. It was a temple of belief. If you could not guard the environment, you were asked to leave. Do you protect your own environment with the same discipline? Let me be even clearer. If you surround yourself with those who mock ambition, those who default to sarcasm, those who normalize mediocrity, those who shrink when you speak boldly, then you are not surrounded by friends, you are surrounded by chains. You do not need cheerleaders. You need builders. You need men who challenge you with, why not? Instead of limiting you with, why not you? You need women who look you in the eye and say, you have not yet touched your true potential. You need mentors who make you restless in comfort. Understand, this law is not only about people, it is about your daily environment. What books do you read? What voices enter your ears? What do you consume when no one is watching? Because your inputs become your inner dialogue, and your inner dialogue becomes your reality. If your atmosphere is filled with power, you will breathe power. If it is polluted with distraction, comparison, and compromise, you will drown in it. That is why I urge you to deliberately construct your mastermind environment through people, through books, through disciplined solitude. Create a mental space so charged with vision that doubt cannot survive within it. Say aloud, I do not permit weakness into my circle. I do not inhale the air of mediocrity. I do not chase approval. I pursue alignment. Repeat this until your subconscious accepts it as law, because it is law. You were not created to labor in silence forever. You were made to multiply, and multiplication only happens when you connect with other great minds. One more story to anchor this truth in you. Abraham Lincoln, during one of the darkest seasons of the Civil War, often withdrew to a group of trusted confidants, men who challenged him, counseled him, and most importantly, believed in the mission of union and freedom. He did not surround himself with flatterers, he surrounded himself with conviction, and with that conviction, he made decisions that redirected the course of history. You will be called to do the same. Surround yourself with strength, or risk being destroyed by proximity to weakness. The principle is simple. If you desire to rise, elevate your environment. Now repeat it again. I walk with power. I speak with power. I build my circle on fire, not on comfort. Let this become your standard. And now, let us move forward into the next law, the one that sharpens your edge and breaks the grip of hesitation. Law 6. Speak as if it is already done. Language shapes destiny. There is the language of kings, and there is the language of prisoners. Every man chooses one or the other. And here is the truth. Before your future becomes reality, it becomes vocabulary. Before you embody power, you must speak power. Before anything in your world transforms, your words must transform. The sixth law is this. You must speak as though the victory is already yours. Not someday, not maybe, not if the world grants it, but now. Speak as a man who has already arrived, and your subconscious will begin shifting the world to match that command. This is not motivational fluff. This is the code that governed every great leader I studied. Let me prove it. Henry Ford once declared, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Do you grasp what that means? It means the language you use internally, even in silence, is constructing the reality you inhabit. When Ford was told a V8 engine could not be built in a single block, he did not argue. He simply said, build it anyway. Not try it, not experiment, not see what happens. He spoke with command. And when the engineers returned with failure, he said it again, build it anyway. That was not arrogance. It was alignment. His words aligned with his identity, and identity always produces results. Thomas Edison spoke in certainty long before the light bulb existed. Surrounded by critics, financial stress, and thousands of failed attempts, he still declared, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That sentence could have been surrender, but he reframed it with a single word and transformed defeat into momentum. Yet he spoke with a tone that assumed success was inevitable because in his mind it already was. You must begin to do the same because your words are not commentary. They are commands to your nervous system. If you say, I'll try, your mind hears, we're not certain. If you say, Maybe one day your mind hears, not yet. If you say, I can't, your mind hears, this is who I am. But if you say, this is who I'm becoming, if you say, it is done, if you say, I move in certainty, then your mind begins rearranging itself around that command. Why? Because the subconscious does not know the difference between truth and repetition. It obeys tone, it obeys rhythm, it obeys language. Let me take you now to Andrew Carnegie, the richest man of his time. Not because of inheritance, not because of education, but because of belief reinforced by speech. He would write down his chief aim and repeat it aloud, not once, not twice, but every morning and night in his own handwriting, in his own voice, with emotion and fire. Until that aim was no longer a goal, it was an identity, and from that identity came action, and from that action came fortune. I asked him, why do you repeat it even now? He said, because if I stop speaking it, I start doubting it. Let that strike you deep. Silence is the oxygen of doubt. Speech is the engine of belief. If you do not speak your future with fire, your subconscious has no reason to pursue it. You must become militant about your self-talk. Say it aloud. I am the kind of man who finishes what he starts. I do not flinch. I do not fold. I walk as if the mountain has already moved. And do not say it once. Say it daily. Say it in the dark. Say it when fear rises. Say it before your biggest decisions. Say it until your very tone becomes proof of your power. Because here is what the great ones knew, and what average men never discover. You don't speak what's real. You speak what will become real. You speak it before you see it. You speak it as if it's already done. This is how you tell your mind, I am in control now. This is how you reprogram fear into fuel. This is how you starve hesitation and install discipline. It begins with words, and those words must burn. Let me take you back to Abraham Lincoln. One of the most powerful speeches ever written, the Gettysburg Address, was only 272 words, but every sentence was sharp. Every line was wrapped in fire. And in less than 3 minutes, he rewrote the meaning of the Civil War. He didn't talk around the point. He spoke it into stone. Do the same with your life. Be precise. Be bold. Be intentional. Stop whispering your ambitions. Stop apologizing for your vision. Stop shrinking your future so others feel at ease. Declare it with certainty. I am building something unshakable. I do not drift, I decree. I speak conviction until the world itself is forced to agree with me. Now I put this challenge before you. Write your future as though it is already finished. Speak your identity as though it is law. Repeat it until the world within you begins to shift. And when doubt whispers, when fear attempts to return, you raise your voice higher. You remind your subconscious who commands the throne. Say it now, not timidly, but with authority. I am the man who speaks power. I am the man who lives power. My voice creates my world. Let this be your new vocabulary. And now, let us move forward into the next law, the one that transforms choice into destiny. Because words without action are noise, and the next law teaches you how to move like fire. Law 7, move like fire. The force of decisive movement. There arrives a moment in every man's journey when the voice in his head must yield to the motion of his body when questions end and execution begins. Because no matter how strong your faith, no matter how sharp your language, without movement it withers on the battlefield of hesitation. This law is simple, but it is absolute. You must act like fire. You must move. Not later, not once you feel prepared, but now. Action is how belief is proven. Every man who built an empire, who altered the course of history, who redefined what was possible, did not do so by waiting for confidence, but by moving boldly through uncertainty. Let us revisit a story you may have heard, but now examine it more deeply. Henry Ford envisioned the automobile at a time when the idea seemed absurd. Roads were unpaved. Cities were unprepared. The public was doubtful, but he acted regardless. He did not wait for favorable conditions. He advanced. Ford did not waste time on endless committees or chase approval from the crowd. He got his hands dirty, tested designs, and made decisions. Action became his identity. That is why he once said, "You can't build a reputation on what you are going to do. He understood the truth. Only movement builds legacy. Now consider Thomas Edison once more. Over 10,000 failed experiments, but he did not stop. He pressed forward. Each failed attempt was followed not by sulking, not by paralysis of thought, but by another test, another trial, another step forward. Why? Because he knew motion destroys fear. When you are in motion, fear cannot cling to you. It only survives in stillness. And Edison refused to stand still. Now, let me take you to Charles M. Schwab. When Carnegie needed a man who could speak with authority, act without hesitation, and unite others around vast industrial visions, he chose Schwab. Why? Because Schwab carried a rare ability. He made rapid, decisive choices. He moved while others sat in endless planning. He entered boardrooms with confidence, delivered speeches with fire, and presented visions others were too timid to voice. And the world rewarded him not because he was the most intelligent, not because he had every answer, but because he acted. Now you must ask yourself, do you stall when you already know what must be done? Do you hide behind the excuse of preparation? Do you chase more clarity when you already hold enough to begin? Here is the truth. Your delay is deception. It convinces you that waiting is safer, that more knowledge is required, that confidence must come before action. But that is not how greatness is born. Confidence is not the condition for action, it is the consequence of it. You must step forward before you feel prepared. You must speak before your voice is steady. You must move before the trembling stops. You must launch before the applause arrives. Because one truth has revealed itself again and again through history: motion builds belief. The man who acts begins to believe he is a man of action. The one who waits begins to believe he is unprepared. You are defined by what you do, not by what you imagine, not by what you hope, not by what you plan, but by what you actually pursue. Consider Abraham Lincoln in one of the most defining moments of his presidency, the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. His advisors urged him to delay, saying the time was wrong, that it would deepen division, that it could even cost him the war. But Lincoln moved forward. He knew that true greatness is hammered into existence by decisive choice. He understood that postponing action for the sake of pleasing others would fracture the nation's moral foundation. So he wrote the words. He signed the document. He declared freedom for millions not because it was comfortable, but because it was necessary. And history shifted that very day. Not because the world was prepared, but because one man resolved to act. You must now do the same, perhaps not for a nation, but for your own destiny. You must learn to live in motion, to act without hesitation, to walk even when the next step remains unseen. Fire does not ask permission to burn. It ignites, it consumes, it spreads. That must become your identity. The man who speaks with courage, the man who moves without delay, the man who does not rehearse fear, but transforms it into fire. Here is your command. From this moment forward, you must act before you feel prepared. You must move before confidence arrives. You must condition your nervous system to believe decisiveness is your natural state. Say this aloud: I do not wait. I act as though it is already finished. I discipline my mind through motion and repeat it daily, because movement is the only language your subconscious understands. The more you act, the more your mind believes. And the more it believes, the more strength you unlock. This is how every empire is built, not through brilliance, not through luck, but through consistent motion. Let this part of the message mark your turning point, the moment you stopped waiting, the moment you began to move like fire. Now let us advance into the next law, the one that ensures your strength does not fade but endures. Law 8. Train the mind. Master your inner language. Everything you experience, your bravery, your hesitation, your choices, your delays, is not merely the outcome of circumstances. It is the result of the words you whisper to yourself when no one else can hear. This is the 8th law. You must discipline the mind and command your inner voice. Understand this clearly. The most dangerous man alive is not the richest, not the strongest, not the loudest. It is the man who governs his self-talk. Your success begins and ends with the dialogue you carry within. If those words are weak, your results will crumble. While studying the lives of men like Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, and Thomas Edison, one pattern stood out without exception. They mastered their internal language long before the world recognized them. Let us begin with Carnegie. Do you truly believe he rose from a poor Scottish boy in a bobbin factory to one of the wealthiest men in history by inheritance or mere chance? No. He trained his mind to speak a language of power that those around him could not. While others told themselves, "I can't," he declared, "I must." While others said, "This is enough," he affirmed, "there is more." Carnegie confessed to me that he spoke his chief aim daily, aloud, with emotion. He wrote it, he declared it, he affirmed it, until it saturated his subconscious and reshaped what his mind believed was possible. That is not mere inspiration, that is installation. That is autosuggestion. It is the most powerful law in all personal development, a force so strong it can transform a penniless boy with no connections into the master builder of steel empires and legacies of generosity. It all begins with language. And now, let us turn our attention to Henry Ford. Ford is remembered for declaring, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." Yet most men repeat that line without grasping its true depth. Ford lived by it. He spoke conviction into himself, even when the entire world dismissed him. Do you realize how many times he was told his dream was foolish, that horses would always dominate transportation, that factories could never operate on the scale he envisioned? But he never echoed the language of doubt. He refused to mirror the disbelief of others. Instead, he forged a new vocabulary and told himself, "It will be done." He trained his mind to answer hardship with solutions, not fear. And through constant repetition, that training forged the steel within him to endure invention's failures, rejection's sting, and ridicule's weight. Now, let us look at Thomas Edison. His triumphs were not accidents of luck or flashes of random genius. They were born from an internal voice, so disciplined it refused to label failure as final. 10,000 failed experiments, 10,000 opinions against him, yet inside he held to one phrase, "I have not failed. I have only found 10,000 ways that will not work." Where did such resilience come from? Not from a gifted brain, not from divine exception. It came from the relentless repetition of empowering language. And then consider Abraham Lincoln, whose private battles could have broken any man. Depression, grief, war, and criticism pressed on him from every side. But Lincoln fortified his mind through journaling, reflection, and unshakable affirmations of purpose. He was not always outwardly confident, yet inwardly he was immovable. His mind held steady in the storm because his language had been trained. This is the very discipline you must now embrace. You must become relentless about your inner dialogue. You must declare what you intend to become, not what you fear, not what you lack, not the shadows of who you once were. Say it aloud. "I do not speak weakness. I speak strength. I do not rehearse defeat. I rehearse identity. I do not echo the world. I craft my own language." Because your subconscious mind does not question, it simply records. It absorbs the words you repeat most often and with greatest emotion, and it accepts them as law. So if you are careless with your language, you will be careless with your power. If you make light of failure, speak casually of your dreams, or indulge in the vocabulary of mediocrity, then mediocrity will define your reality. You must discipline your tongue. Write affirmations that reflect the man you are becoming, and speak them with passion every single day. This is not superstition. It is science. It is strategy. It is the very method by which every giant I studied rewrote the script of their lives. You claim you want courage, then stop declaring fear. You claim you want discipline, then stop labeling yourself lazy. You claim you want to be unstoppable, then your inner voice must confirm it long before the evidence appears. This is where real transformation begins, in the silence of the morning, before the noise of the world intrudes, before your doubts awaken. You must declare your new identity before society tries to hand you back the old one. Let me be direct. This is war. The world will bombard you with fear. It will shout anxiety. It will whisper hesitation. And if you do not have a stronger voice already programmed within, you will bow to it. You will obey your doubts, and your life will become an echo of distraction rather than a vision fulfilled. So I charge you now. Craft your inner language, repeat it daily, speak it with fire, feed your subconscious with clarity, courage, discipline, and purpose. If you do this for 30 days, only 30, your external world will begin to change. Not because of luck or chance, but because your mind has aligned. And once the mind aligns, the body follows, decisions sharpen, and momentum accelerates. You always become what you practice. So practice strength, practice conviction. Rehearse the voice of the man you are stepping into until no trace remains of the man you left behind. Let us now move to the next law, the one that guarantees you will never drift again because your time has been claimed. Law 9. Command your time. Take ownership of every hour. Let me speak plainly. Most men run from their own lives. If you cannot master time, you cannot master anything. Time is not just a clock ticking. Time is the canvas upon which your destiny is painted. Every wasted hour, every neglected minute is not just lost, it is buried potential. Law 9 is simple, yet merciless. Rule your time or watch your future die at the hands of distraction. The great men I studied, the titans who reshaped the world, Carnegie, Ford, Edison, Schwab, Lincoln, were not only brilliant with ideas, they were ruthless with their hours. They scheduled with precision. They built structure. They treated every minute as sacred. Take Andrew Carnegie as an example. He once said, "Do your duty and a little more, and the future will take care of itself." That little more was possible only because of how he managed his time. He did not drift from task to task. He did not cater to every demand. He understood that an hour spent on another man's vision was an hour stolen from his own. Carnegie arranged his days with absolute clarity. Mornings were devoted to strategy, afternoons to execution, evenings to reflection. Meetings were efficient, decisions decisive, and he demanded the same rigor from the men around him. Why? Because achievement requires rhythm, discipline, and intentionality. Now let us look at Henry Ford. Most recognize him for transforming the automobile industry, but what truly made his success inevitable was his command over time. Ford despised long meetings and endless debates. He once remarked, "Thinking is the hardest work there is," which is probably the reason so few engage in it. What did he mean? He meant that true thinking, focused, disciplined, scheduled thought is rare. Most men think passively. Henry Ford, however, carved out specific time to think deeply, to solve problems, and to execute with precision. His calendar was not a formality. It was a weapon. He understood that every wasted minute meant profit lost, momentum stalled, and legacy diminished. Now consider Thomas Edison, one of the greatest inventors history has ever seen. Do you believe he achieved 1,093 patents by mere chance? Edison worked in strict timed intervals. He would lock himself in his laboratory for days at a stretch. For him, time wasn't measured by the clock, but by what was produced. He never waited for inspiration to strike. He built the environment that made inspiration inevitable. His lab was not chaos. It was meticulously designed for intense focus. His team knew precisely when to work, when to report, when to think, and when to act. Genius was not the result of freedom, it was the outcome of structure. So let me ask you directly, have you structured your own genius? Do you carve out time each day not only for tasks, but for intentional progress? Now, step into the mind of Charles Schwab. When Andrew Carnegie appointed Schwab to lead U.S. Steel, Schwab did not celebrate. He conducted a time audit. He asked himself, where does every hour go? He then brought in a consultant named Ivy Lee, who taught him the now legendary rule of 6. Every evening, Schwab would write down the 6 most important tasks for the next day, ranked by priority. He worked on the first until it was completed, then moved to the second, and so on. No multitasking, no wasted energy, pure execution. For this strategy, Schwab paid Lee $25,000 in the early 1900s, a fortune at the time. Why? Because the discipline of time is worth more than gold. Now let us turn to Abraham Lincoln. His presidency was forged not in peace, but in chaos. The Civil War raged, his advisors disagreed, the nation was fracturing. Yet Lincoln structured his time with deliberate reverence. He carved hours for solitude, for reading, for writing. He met with generals not on their schedule, but on his. He was never rushed, not because pressure didn't exist, but because his time was already claimed by purpose. And this is what you must learn. When your hours are claimed by vision, the world respects them. When they are claimed by emotion, the world will consume you. Most men drift through life because they never decide what a successful day looks like. They react, they scramble. They stay busy, but never build. You must design your day the way an architect designs a structure, every block with intent, every hour with meaning, every moment with a purpose. Here is a blueprint to begin. First hour, silence, autosuggestion, and visualization. Declare your aim. Rehearse your identity. Install belief. Second hour, deep work, undisturbed, focused, mission-driven. Third hour, execution of your most critical task. No delay, no debate, only movement. Midday, reflection, nourishment, and renewal. Afternoon, communication, meetings, strategy, planning. Evening, review, recalibration, and repetition of belief. Read something that stretches your mind, and above all, track it. Every hour unmeasured is an hour lost. Every forgotten hour is a seed that never grows. Say this with conviction. I am the commander of my time. My calendar is my shield. My schedule is my sword. No hour is random. No moment is wasted. I construct each day like a brick in a fortress of legacy. This is what separates the ordinary from the unstoppable. Not talent, not even vision, but the ownership of time. A man who rules his hours rules his destiny. Do you wish to become the man you were designed to be? Then examine your calendar. Your to-do list is not just a set of tasks, it is a mirror. It reflects your values. It reveals who you are becoming. The man who builds an empire has the same 24 hours as the man who drifts through existence. The difference is only this: one commands them. So begin tomorrow, not with noise, but with structure. Begin it not with moods, but with strategy. Decide this moment. I do not drift through days. I forge each hour like stone. I govern time, and because I govern time, I govern my future. This is the path to becoming unstoppable. And now we enter the final law, the one that does not suggest transformation but demands it. The law that slays hesitation, doubt, and delay in a single decisive stroke. It is time to kill the old identity and rise into power. Law 10, kill the old identity and rise into power. There comes a point in every man's journey when improvement is no longer enough. He must not simply grow better. He must evolve into someone new entirely. This is that moment. This is that command. Law 10 is not for the man seeking small gains. It is for the man prepared to destroy the version of himself that only survives. Understand this. The greatest enemy of your future is not fear, laziness, or even ignorance. It is identity, the quiet, invisible pact you made with mediocrity about who you believe you are. That pact must be burned today, because if you refuse to eliminate the old self, you will always return to it. Just as water seeks its level, a man will always return to his self-image. You may alter your habits, your goals, even your schedule, but until you shift your identity, you will remain chained to the old life. I must give you a truth few will ever dare to hear. You are addicted to the man you used to be. And if you do not break that addiction, it will be the reason you leave this world with your song still unplayed. Let us be ruthless with honesty. Look in the mirror and confront the truth. The old self, the one who delays, who hesitates, who doubts, who seeks approval, who breaks his own word, who avoids the flame, who accepts mediocrity that man must die, he cannot be managed, he cannot be bargained with. He must be destroyed, because he will always drag you back to comfort. And comfort, my friend, is not your ally. Comfort is a prison with golden bars and no locks. The door stands open, yet most never step out because the old self whispers that standing still is safer than stepping into fire. But fire is where greatness is forged. Let me remind you of the men who dared to walk through the flames. Abraham Lincoln, during the harshest winter of the Civil War, was urged again and again to compromise, to ease the burden, to wait for a more convenient moment. But Lincoln knew what few could grasp. He had to kill the part of himself that still longed to please everyone, the part that trembled under criticism, that questioned his authority, that craved peace more than truth. He chose identity over approval. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation in the shadow of political suicide. And in that act, he became something more. He became Lincoln, not just a man, but a legend. Understand this. Legends are not born. They are forged in fire. Andrew Carnegie began as a messenger boy, poor, invisible, unremarkable. Yet each day he carried himself as the man he intended to be, not the boy he once was. He studied success. He wrote down his mission. He visualized influence. He practiced the posture of leadership long before anyone followed him. And eventually the old Carnegie, the poor child, the hesitant doubter, the quiet dreamer, died. In his place rose the steel magnate, the most commanding industrialist of his generation. Why? Because he chose identity. He did not wait for worthiness to arrive. He decided to be worthy, and his actions proved it true. Now let us turn to Henry Ford. Do you realize how much doubt pressed against him? Do you know how often people told him, "You cannot mass-produce cars. People will never adopt them. Factories cannot be systematized." Ford could have listened. He could have stalled. But instead, he made an irreversible decision. I am the man who will transform transportation forever. And every move he made as that man, not the one tied to the past. And soon the world bowed to the vision he had already embraced as fact. Do you see now? Each time you act as the man you once were, you teach your mind to remain there. But each time you speak, move, lead, train, think, and decide as the man you are becoming, you suffocate the old self until he has no breath left. This is the true process of transformation. It does not come from one fleeting surge of motivation, but through the relentless repetition of identity. Let me give you your practice. Each morning, declare your new identity aloud, not as a hope, but as a decree. I am decisive. I am disciplined. I am the man who follows through. I act as the man who wins, because I am that man now. I do not seek permission. I lead. Every time you hear the voice of the old self, the one that says, "Be careful, slow down, you're not ready yet," you must answer with the voice of the new identity. That man no longer speaks for me. That man is gone. I have already decided. Because once you repeat this enough, your subconscious accepts it as law. And when it becomes law, everything shifts. Your posture changes. Your tone sharpens. Your results grow. Your very presence transforms. Why? Because the world does not respond to how you feel or how much talent you possess. It responds to the identity you practice. Let me give you a final truth. Doubt is not reality. It is only habit. And like every habit, it can be broken through repetition, through conviction, through forcefully rejecting the old version of yourself every time he tries to return. So I ask you now, are you willing to kill the old identity? Not softly, not someday now. Are you ready to walk into the fire of your future even when you feel unprepared, even when it burns, even when it means becoming someone unrecognizable? Because I assure you this, the man you are meant to be already lives within you, but he cannot rise while the old self still breathes. So declare it with me and declare it with conviction. I am no longer the man who doubts. I do not hesitate. I do not delay. I do not explain. I walk in identity, not in security. I repeat power until weakness dies. And you must say it daily, because this is your reprogramming. This is your rebirth. You can no longer be the man who waits, the man who wonders, the man who hides. You are the man who decides, and the decision has already been made. Repeat this speech. Repeat your belief. Repeat your identity until the old self cannot endure. Because the man who conquers is already within you. Let him rise. And let us finish this where all true power begins with the pen in your hand. You may think your story has already been written, that the past has sealed your fate, that your failures have carved a ceiling above you, that your patterns cannot be broken. But hear me clearly, you are not broken. You are unwritten. You are not the man defined by failure. You are the man awakened by it. Every delay, every doubt, every misstep, every fear, none of it was the end of your story. It was the setup, the tension before the breakthrough, the test before the transformation. It brought you here, and now this very moment is the pen, and you are the author, no one else. Not your past, not your family, not your mistakes, not your friends. You and only you. So I ask you now, what story will you choose to write? Will you keep replaying the same old chapter where fear sets your pace, doubt crafts your words, and hesitation holds the pen? Or will you turn the page, seize the pen with authority, and declare, "This is the chapter where I become untouchable. This is where I decide who I am, not once, but every single day." Because that is what these 10 laws represent. They are not suggestions, they are not theories. They are the unshakable rules of your new identity. An identity is not carved in stone, it is carved in repetition. If you want to become unrecognizable, if you want to be the kind of man who builds, who leads, who advances without retreat, then you must rehearse this speech. You must repeat these laws. You must affirm your belief until your subconscious accepts it as the only way to live. Because you are not your old thoughts. You are not your old story. You are not the man you were before these words reached you. You are what you rehearse. And repetition is the discipline that made the great ones great. Andrew Carnegie did not simply imagine power. He rehearsed it morning and night. Henry Ford did not just hope he could. He repeated his conviction until it became undeniable. Thomas Edison did not merely attempt. He failed thousands of times and repeated action until success had no choice but to appear. Abraham Lincoln did not rise by applause. He chose identity each day until history bent to his will. And now it is your turn. Let me hand you your new ritual. Every morning, declare one law aloud, just one. Let it shape your tone, direct your energy, and set your compass for the day. Each night before you sleep, listen to this speech again. Do not miss a day. Do not wait for inspiration. Repeat until repetition hardens into identity. Because what you practice becomes your rhythm, and your rhythm becomes your reality. Write this down and say it with me. I am not broken. I am unwritten. My past was preparation. I choose what comes next. I repeat my strength. I silence my doubt. I am the author now, and I do not look back. You are not here to survive. You are not here to relive history. You are here to rewrite it. You are here to reprogram your subconscious until the old patterns collapse beneath the weight of your new identity. Do not let this speech remain a passing moment. Let it be your manual. Return to it as a warrior returns to his weapon daily, faithfully, without hesitation. And when you forget who you are, play it again. Because identity is forged in what you repeat. And the man who repeats power becomes power. Declare it one final time. I am the rewrite. This is my chapter. This is my new law. And I repeat it until I embody it. Now close the old book. Lift the pen and write the next version of yourself with fire, with faith, and without apology. Let the world bear witness to the rewrite. It begins here. It begins now.